So I went to the dentist today. And I'm going to be honest, I've only been to the dentist twice in the last decade.
Oh my God. I go every 6 months and I fall asleep in the chair every time.
What a fucking... Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm serious. The dentist is in there like working on, cleaning him, whatever. And I'm like...
No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no. No, I did not go to the dentist. I hate the dentist. And then I didn't have insurance for a long time. So I was like, that's my excuse. Don't look at me like
You've definitely had insurance for like at least the last 6 years.
Paul...
I didn't have insurance for a long time. Okay?
Let me have my goddamn excuse. Okay, my point is, so I went to the dentist today, and for my fucking cleaning, I had to get 2 shots of Novocaine. And this was after...
Why did you have to get shots for your cleaning?
Because... I haven't been to the dentist much in the last 10 years, so there was a lot of shit to clean. More importantly, this was after she had done all that numbing. She numbed my whole bottom gum.
I think you're just a little bitch.
Several times. Shut up. And then when she told me that she had to give me the shots, I had a full breakdown in the chair. And she
have
had
you ever
to
seen
keep
the
me.
needles that they use for that?
I don't look at it.
Oh my God. So one time... I saw the needle.
Don't tell me. I don't
They're
want to hear
literally
it,
like they're like this big.
I have to go back. Don't tell me. I know they're long. This
Did you
lady,
tell her that?
Oh yeah, I told her I was like, I'm very nervous. I haven't been in a while, and
no, about the needle. Did you say you have a thing with needles?
No, but she could tell.
Mistake.
I think she could tell when I sat up and I started hyperventilating, and then I started crying, and then she had to keep me from leaving the dentist's office. I think then she was like, "It's okay."
You're still attached to the X-ray machine.
It's like, and I'm like trying to get, and she's like, "I don't like needles either," and I'm like, "Bitch, this is not what this is."
Attached that, just dragging the whole dentist bed out with you. No,
basically. So definitely my manliest moment of 2019. But I survived. Took 2 hours, but I am here, kids.
An hour and a half of that was the breakdown.
Was just her. Well, yeah, but after it was done, she was like, "See how much faster that went?" Whenever, because she kept being like, "Honey, why don't you just let me give you the Novocaine?" I was like, "No, I'm fine," and I'm gripping the chair, and she's
ripping the chair apart.
Exactly. And so finally, she gave me the Novocaine, which I admit was not as horrible as I thought.
So my dentist, I'm the same way with needles, full blown panic attacks, passing out, everything. Mm-hmm. She, whenever she knows she has to give me something, she'll like put my head to one side and like have it fully numbed, and then she'll just start talking to me and like won't even tell me like it's coming. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know it's coming, but she won't be like, "Oh, it's coming right this second." But she'll just like have a conversation with me, and then all of a sudden be like, "Okay, we're done," and like I have no idea that the shot was there ever.
Really?
I don't know how she does it. It's magical.
Wow.
But she saved me a lot of panic attacks.
Wow.
And I've only had to do it when I had to have a cavity filled. I've never needed it for a cleaning. I think you're just a little...
I'm not a little bitch, Paul. I had a lot of buildup.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay? You don't know. You don't know what it's like. Anyways. So, yeah. But my teeth are clean.
I have to give blood sometime this month for a blood test for my physical every year. My yearly physical.
Yeah.
I'm terrified.
It's going to be rough.
That's worse than a shot by like 100 times.
No, it's not.
Oh, that's 100% worse.
No, once they hook you up, then you're just laying there.
No. And then I know the blood's leaving my body, and I like spiral out of control. My like thought process, I just start to get dizzy. Everything starts to turn red. I used to get tunnel vision, and then when they take it out and I know the blood's out of my body, I just like I'm done.
I can't believe you're calling me a bitch when this lady was literally just. I don't know what she was scraping at my teeth. You know what? Like on top of the noise of like, she's inside my mouth, and you're just having a little bit of blood leave your body, and you're passing out. So who's really the bitch, Paul?
Definitely you.
Oh my God. Anyways, I got to get a couple cavities filled because the doctor told me that I've been grinding my teeth, and I popped out. I guess I popped out old cavity fillings.
Oh, wow. Good job.
So my stress level is at a curve.
I think you just need to drink less caffeine.
Nah, I don't think that's it.
You're like, this coffee's really good today. I made it with some stronger beans this time.
I will say that whenever, I don't think I ever ground my teeth. I do. And it's got to be fairly recent because I've noticed it in the last year where I woke up and I realized my teeth have been grinding because I never felt that before. But whenever I was drinking, that was one nice thing because I would knock out, and you don't grind your teeth whenever you pass out. You just pass out with your mouth open and everything else. So the
Probably
benefits
just stress
of drinking.
levels.
Yeah,
I mean, you did a lot. Bought a house, got married.
yeah, it's
you know,
a lot.
work's been busy. You've done a ton, so
Yeah,
probably
it's
just
been a lot.
stress.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And you're working on the pregnancy too.
Yeah,
You have stressors from like 6 different ways, so
that's what I like to do. I like to combine all the stress at once. Why
I know
spread
you
it
do.
out?
I know you
Get
do.
it over with. That's how I see it. Get it over with. Anyways, what about you though? Anything interesting happened to you lately?
I DJ'd another drag brunch.
Okay.
DJ Polly Pocket.
Yes, I heard you guys got new sound equipment.
Yeah, so the Trailer Park Girls do sound now. So if you need like, you know, if you're throwing a party and you just want entertainment and music or just some music, they do that. Yeah, I did a lot. I've been planning for David's birthday, which this is dropping. Yeah. So his birthday's on the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been like planning for that. I've been really good this year because usually I just panic buy everything at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually went to the mall, took a couple hours to like walk around, go through all the shops and pick out a few different things. Yeah, I just been, you know, doing my thing.
We got Friendsgiving this weekend.
Friendsgiving, yep. And then, I'm taking him to a really nice restaurant for his birthday.
That's nice.
But yeah, I've been really just planning his birthday, and I had a horrible cold for like 2 weeks that I finally just got over. So I've been pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Pretty relaxed.
I almost died on my trip back from Indiana.
How'd you manage that?
Well, we got stuck in the fucking snowstorm that hit the Midwest. That's when it decided to snow. Was on our way back. And so Samantha and I driving through freaking Ohio at like literally 40 miles an hour. There's just cars lining the roads that have slid off the road, semis that have flipped over.
My God.
And we're just death gripping it because fucking Ohio doesn't have a freaking exit there are no hotels, there are no gas stations. For over 100 miles you have nothing.
How do you not have a gas station for
I
100
don't
miles?
know. Ask Ohio. There is nothing. I'm not lying. I'm not exaggerating. Go on
How
80,
is that
30
even
into 80
possible?
East, and there is nothing for 100 miles. And so we just kept plowing away, and then finally we're able to pull off. We actually got to our friend Jill's house because she lives in the other end of Ohio. And we stayed with her the night, and then we got up the next day.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How do you not have anything for 100 miles?
Yeah,
That's like longer than all of Rhode Island.
Most importantly, how the fuck does Ohio not salt and plow their roads? Because it wasn't like the snow snuck up on them. They knew the snow was coming. For days, they knew the snow was coming. Like, you're Ohio. You get lots of snow. What the fuck, Ohio? Are you listening to me? Because I want to know why the hell you're
all
not
of
salting
Ohio
and plowing
tuned into
your
this
road.
one episode.
Just, I want to take this and I want to speak to your manager and I want to know what the fuck is going on.
That's actually really crazy.
Exactly. So, yeah. But yeah, good stuff.
So in case you didn't know, you're listening to the Your Queer Story podcast. If you just somehow stumbled across this and wondered why there were just two men bitching about things for 8 minutes, roughly, you're in the right place.
Yes.
You didn't take a wrong turn and click on like a rant podcast. That's not what we are for the most part.
Who knows? Maybe one day.
Until we start, unless we're doing like our satire, like asshole episodes where we make fun of people, then we kind of rant for like
Queer
an hour.
villains. We're due for a queer villain.
We
It's
are
just trying to squeeze one in with all the stuff we got going on.
we had a whole month of them, kind of.
We did. That's true. Of course, yeah, they were all queer people, but they were villains as well.
Mm-hmm.
October, go back and listen to those assholes.
We are the podcast that inspires peace, love, and radicalism, and we are coming to you this November. We skipped a week because Evan decided he had to be busy.
Yep.
But we're back, and we're better than ever.
And we're as queer as ever.
And I'm Paul, and with me is
Evan. I'm Evan.
And that was the most put together intro we've ever done.
That's
So,
fantastic. This
you're
is
welcome.
a wrap. The podcast is done. Thank you so much for listening.
76 episodes in, we finally did a real introduction. So yeah, I guess that's it, everybody.
Yeah. We have nowhere else to go from here. We have peaked officially as podcasters. So today we actually, if you're listening when this episode drops or right around there, then you know that this has been, the previous week has been Trans Awareness Week. And that is because, wow, first of all, did you just pop every joint in your body? I don't know if you heard a loud pop. That was all Paul. Anyways, it was Trans Awareness Week, and they would do that because it leads up to the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is November 20th. So November 20th is when it was first founded 20 years ago, actually this year. It was founded in 1999 and created by a transgender woman and queer activist, Gwendolyn Ann Smith. And Smith had been active in the trans rights movement during the early 1900s. 1900s. She's been around for a long time.
She just keeps on kicking.
She looks as beautiful as ever. She was active during the early 1990s, starting one of the first online public forums for transgender people.
A 1990s public forum for transgender. That was risky.
How fun and slow.
That was. I mean, it probably took 30 minutes just to load one post, but it was probably. I mean, the internet and when the internet first came around, it was the Wild West. Like, anything went. So I can't imagine the kind of either posts that were on here. Hopefully she was able to keep it restricted.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't much moderation back then.
Yeah.
So who knows what was on that forum?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you had to know how to find it in the first place.
Well, I mean, restricted for their safety, not
they're
posting bad things.
I get you. So people couldn't find them. Yeah. I don't know.
And harass them and stuff.
She has a degree in graphic arts and design and web design, so
okay, she probably
had pretty good control of it. Yeah, it's not like today where anybody can design a website, but you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're like me. So, anyways, so it was one of the first public forums for transgender people. She also wrote articles and various online blogs before finding her current position as a columnist for the Bay Area Reporter in San Francisco. But Gwendolyn's most lasting legacy will no doubt be her organization of TDOR, Transgender Day of Remembrance.
The idea for the ceremony was sparked by the murder of Rita Hester, a black trans woman who was stabbed to death in her own apartment in Allston, Massachusetts on November 28, 1998. Immediately after her death, friends and family organized a candlelit vigil to remember Rita, which drew around 250 people in attendance. Just 1 month before Rita's murder, Matthew Shepard had also been gruesomely killed. Yet, unlike the nonstop media coverage of Matthew's death, as well as the quick capture and conviction of his killers, Rita's murder was relatively ignored by news stations, and her case has never been solved. Which, shout out to all my true crime podcasts I listen to. You should do an episode on this.
There you go,
help her get some.
Well, it's right up there with Marsha P. Johnson. Her death is also never been solved.
True.
She just killed herself in the river, but somehow she had a hole in her head.
Right.
So.
She put a hole in her head. She shot herself in the head and then jumped in the river.
Yeah,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
A black transgender woman dying seemed of little concern to the nation, including many of the larger LGBT organizations who had capitalized on the spotlight surrounding Matthew's death. Outraged by the neglect and apathy over Rita's murder, Gwendolyn Smith put her graphic design skills to work and created the website Remembering Our Dead, which listed the names and death of transgender people from 1970 to 1998.
Yeah, and
that's incredible.
Oh yeah, it is incredible. Especially.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm gonna speak on the web design requirements of that time. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you knew what you were doing, it wasn't that hard. But I mean, today, if I was gonna build a similar website, it's a lot of drag and drop. I can copy and paste and do all that. She actually had to go in and handwrite code, HTML, and all kinds of things to get this to display. This was a big project.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's just like the forum that she did. She did a lot. She was one of the first online activists and really helped pull the trans community together, because if you're transgender, first of all, there's so few of us, and then to be able to go out in public, if you don't live in a big city, you're fucking screwed.
Right.
But the internet,
absolutely. Literally.
Exactly. So using the internet to bring the trans community together was huge, and that's partly why TDOR took off, because it was just at the cusp where you could get the information out there and you could let people know, hey, this is what's happening. And then just readdressing Matthew Shepard, which if you go back and you listen to our episodes on him, just a horrendous murder. But we talked a lot in the episode about how he was this young white kid that everybody could look up and think, oh, this is my son. And that's why the nation was so grieved by it.
He had the blonde hair, blue eyes,
yeah.
Everybody either had a son, a cousin, or, a brother.
That looked like him.
Not everybody, but...
Yeah. well, you knew somebody that looked like Matthew, and
Right.
like I said, the media could present it to the white population. The white population could feel bad, but this wasn't because anything so much about gay rights. Because as we see, when Rita Hester is murdered a month later, nobody gives a shit.
Right. Absolutely.
So it wasn't like, oh, we're trying to be more progressive and kind. It's just how the public reacted to Matthew, which has been good for us overall, but again shows the racism.
Absolutely.
So the following year, on November 20th, 1999, Smith organized the first official Transgender Day of Remembrance vigil. Today, over 200 cities and countries around the world observe this practice. In 2017, Canada became the first country to officially declare TDOR as a National Day of Remembrance. The ceremonies and services surrounding the day will vary from area to area. There is no required format, though most do include the candlelight vigil. As for those remembered, the official Transgender Day of Remembrance website only recognizes those lost to anti-trans violence in the past year. However, in some communities, organizers may choose to include other transgender individuals who passed from other forms of death, and we encourage you to see what events may be held tonight or the rest of the week in observance of TDOR. And all this week, there are vigils and different ceremonies going on. Ceremonies going on. Like the Boston Globe just printed an article about a big one that was in Boston and things like that. Just so you know, I don't think I said in the last thing. So now Gwendolyn has changed the site from Remembering Our Dead to Transgender Day of Remembrance site. So the website switched in sometime in the early 2010s.
If you don't have time or you can't make it out tonight, or maybe there's not anything going on in your area, take 15 minutes, look up a couple articles, just expand your knowledge base. You know, it could be anything related to transgender rights or health or the needs of the community. Just take 15 minutes and do a little research. You have 45 minutes to listen to us.
Yeah, that's right.
You can read 15 more minutes, you know, get a little more education, help out the community a little bit more.
Yes.
So in addition to the awareness brought on by the annual vigil, the research and information available on trans issues as a whole has only increased and grown with time, as has some of the misinformation about the community. Today we're going to discuss 5 of the most common myths and misconceptions surrounding trans people, as well as some of the wonderful facts about the community. And we'll end the podcast with the list of transgender people murdered in America during 2019 as a tribute to them and a Transgender Day of Remembrance. So let's start with some common misconceptions.
All right, so misconception number 1. What is a transgender person? A transgender person is someone whose gender identity or gender expression is not in agreement with their biological sex or their sex assigned at birth. This term is an umbrella term for anyone who falls in this category, and therefore covers the following. Transsexuals, people who seek medical treatment to change their bodies. Transsexual is an older term and specifically and only refers to those who seek medical intervention. Even so, most younger trans individuals prefer the umbrella term of transgender to the older term of transsexual.
Crossdressers. While the term is used in a legal sense to cover anyone dressing outside their perceived gender, in the trans world it applies specifically to men who crossdress, meaning they prefer to occasionally wear the clothes and makeup culturally associated with women and temporarily act in feminine fashion. Cross-dressing men still identify as male, and most are heterosexual. The old and outdated term for cross-dresser is transvestite, but that term, along with the word tranny, are offensive and should not be used.
And crossdresser is not a drag queen.
Right.
And then we have non-binary and genderqueer. There are a few terms which people who don't fit into the gender binary use. We will not get into the various definitions on this episode, only to say that those who don't identify as male or female are still considered transgender. This is because they have all been assigned a gender at birth, and their expression or identity does not fully match that gender, or perhaps does not match any gender at all. So again, we have transgender umbrella term, and then you have the different people that fall under that umbrella.
Yeah. Misconception number 2. Gender and sex are the same thing. The more research is done on sex, gender, and sexuality, the more concepts on binary genders and orientations are broken down. But a big misconception is that sex and gender are the same. In reality, we have 3 categories: sex, gender identity, and gender expression. Sex. It is the biological makeup of an individual combined with their assignment at birth. If we base sex upon genetic criterion, meaning based upon genitals, then we have 3 sexes: male, female, and intersex. But there are other ways we measure sex, such as genetic, chromosomes, hormonal, the predominant hormone, either testosterone or estrogen, and anatomical, how the genitals look. In the 1990s, Dr. Anne Fausto Sterling found five sexes in her gonadic research alone. When we factor in the following 20 plus years of genetic research, the number of sexes becomes almost infinite. Regardless of what an individual wants to use to define sex, what we know for certain is that there are more than two sexes.
Yeah, whenever people are like, well, what's in your pants? Well, even then it doesn't matter. So, like, you're not going around looking at everybody's dicks or everybody's, whatever is down there.
Right.
So you just assume that everybody looks the same, but they don't. There's different sizes. There's different
shapes, different colors, different textures.
Everything. Well, like you said, just in her study of gonads, there were 5 different sexes. So if you're like, well, it's your genitals, well, that's not true. And if you're like chromosomes, don't even fucking get started. So when people say your biological sex, what does that mean? A lot of people do it down. They'll be like, okay, so it's your reproductive organs. And that's how a lot of like the bigots will use to define what is sex. But, and there are some transgender people that are like, okay, fine. This is my sex, but this is my gender identity and my expression.
Right.
So gender identity, this is the internal sense of one's gender. Here's where a lot of the confusion comes in. Most transgender people will not debate on whether sex is limited to a few current definitions. However, gender identity is socially constructed and therefore is a neurological aspect of gender and sex. Studies have shown that many trans people have the brain scans of the gender they identify with rather than the gender they were assigned at birth. Though we must point out that these studies have not yet been proven conclusive, there is more research to be done. They just started doing this, and it's not true for every single transgender person, but a lot of times, especially in younger kids who like they're assigned a male and they identify as female, and they find that their brain scans match female.
Yep.
Yet when we say socially constructed, we mean that gender identity is created by the surrounding society. We have spoken at length about the various gender identities in other cultures in times past and today. One of our most in-depth episodes spoke about the two-spirit individuals of the North American tribes. Almost every indigenous society in America pre-Columbus recognized 3 to 5 genders, and this was not central to North America by any means. In 2015, PBS produced a map which shows multiple gender identities all around the world. We've shared the link and the map in our script for our leaders to check out as well.
For our listeners, not our leaders.
Our leaders, our listeners and our readers, if you're reading the script rather than listening to it.
I just want to I know we have one more thing, but I just kind of want to go back into the sex.
Yeah.
So the gonads, right? Found 5 sexes in there. Is there more information about that? Did we post that?
I did not post her specific study. I did post a great link in the bottom that talks about the different sexes where they pull that, because her study has since been like, that was one of the earliest studies into
it's been, like,
multiple sexes.
Changed.
Yeah, so it hasn't been disregarded, but they were just like, that was her big finding. Like, there's 5 sexes. That's the 90s, and today they're like, but really. It's all about how you measure sex, like we said, how you look at people, their chromosomes or their genitals.
I would like to read into them. Learn more about myself.
There's a really good article at the bottom that I linked in. I think it's called like all the sexes or something like that. So that's at the bottom.
All right. And next up we have gender expression. This is the outward expression of gender through name, pronouns, clothing, etc. The final ladder on the rung of gender is by far the most culturally obvious and most dangerous. Most people in Western society today won't argue that an individual can dress and express themselves how they please. We emphasize most people. Provided, of course, that the individual chooses a gender and sticks with it, except when entertaining, such as in drag. And this is where our non-binary friends truly struggle. Because while a binary trans person sticks to their role, so to speak, a genderqueer or non-binary individual does not fit any role. There is certainly a large amount of hate spewed at trans people daily simply because they ask to be acknowledged for who they are. But ironically, it is often the binary trans community which gives their non-binary trans friends the most trouble. For instance, a transgender man wanting to put on a dress draws much harsher criticism than a cisgender man doing the same thing. No doubt this is a result of fear of further backlash from the bigots. Yet, this reaction ignores the lines between identity and expression. Every individual, trans or cisgender, has the right to identify and express themselves how they please, and if the expression doesn't seem to match the identity, then it is our perception of expression that is skewed and not the expressive individual's error.
Yeah, so a lot of people I don't think they think about this. And when I came out as trans, I didn't realize, I didn't expect my reaction that I would have the first time I saw a transgender guy doing drag. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why would you go back to that? That's how I was thinking. And that's because I didn't understand the difference between sex, identity, and expression. Like, the thing is, a cisgender person never questions their gender identity. It's always linked with their sex, and they just assume that's the same, and it's not, because you've just never questioned it.
Right, you've never had the need to.
Exactly. So when they do a gender expression that's outside their identity, it's perfectly fine. But a transgender person who has to divide all three, and their expression doesn't match their identity all the time, you get a lot of hate, and you get a lot of confused looks, and you get a lot of people saying, well, if you want to be a girl, then why didn't you just say a girl? That kind of crap. So I definitely like trans guys in the drag community, or even trans women in the drag community, just having to constantly combat these things, and like even trans women who are drag queens and people not understanding that their drag is separate from their trans identity. Like, this is an art form that they're expressing, that, and just because they happen to be trans, it's two different things. So misconception number 3: it's easy to transition. That's such a loaded and false statement. The reality is that there are many layers to transition, and most transgender people never feel that they are quite done transitioning. The 3 stages of transition are social, legal, and medical. Not every trans person will undergo all of these stages. This does not make them more or less trans. Transition is a personal journey that varies from individual to individual. Each stage comes with its own risks and rewards, and they are as follows. Social: coming out as transgender, possibly changing your names or pronouns, possibly changing your clothing and grooming habits. Some of the rewards: living openly, expressing how one pleases, being true to oneself. And some of the possible risk: loss or ostracization from friends and family, loss of job or housing, social ostracization, physical harassment, and violence. So most trans people that that means that they've socially transitioned. I mean, they have come out and told you.
The next step is legal: changing one's legal name and gender identity on government documents. Some of the rewards include less risk of being outed by documents, ability to pursue surgery if one chooses, having the correct information on one's identification.
So I put the ability to pursue surgery because you have to often be legally transitioned in most states to get surgery.
And some of the risks include it's often a lengthy and expensive process. Chances of denial by schools or government branches, having to come out every time you go to have a new form or ID corrected. Because when you have to come out, you're never done coming out. No. And this is something I had to tell somebody one time, because they're like, oh, you came out, it's fine, blah, 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 blah. And like, yeah, I'm great. Like, I don't have a problem coming out to people.
Yeah.
That's me, though. I know some people who still get nervous. But when you come out, you don't get to just come out and be done.
Yeah.
You end up having to come out to your coworkers. You have to come out to the coffee shop. You have to come out to your doctor. Like, it's not like you just came out of the closet one day and you're like, live the rest of your life. You're like, I'm out and free. You have to come out to everybody.
Yeah. It's such a cisgender heterosexual world. Like, everybody just assumes, and especially if you're gay, you're constantly like, oh, you and your wife? And you're like, my wife, David? Yes, he's great.
Well, sometimes if I'm in a really uncomfortable situation, I will use the gender neutral term fiance.
Yeah.
And I don't, like, I'm not saying that you should ever hide that you're gay, but if you're in a situation where you're like, I don't know if it's necessarily safe for me here, then that's just one trick I've learned.
Oh yeah, always fiance. Be safe.
Because then if you say partner or spouse, they kind of look at you, but if you say fiance,
yeah,
they don't.
Yeah, no, I always be safe. That's I tell Samantha, like, which it's easy for her because when she's just talking about me, she can say her husband. But I'm like, if we're gonna meet somebody and you're worried about anything, like, just be safe,
Yeah.
So I mean, not like she's good about it. I don't mean like she's just like, she'll stand up to her like coworkers or something. But I mean, like, if it's an unsafe situation.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
medical. So the first step for most trans people who want to medically transition is hormones. Testosterone for transgender men and estrogen for trans women. Many transgender women will also take testosterone blockers in order to aid the estrogen, as testosterone is the more aggressive hormone. Surgery is a different topic altogether, and there is no such thing as the surgery. So when you're asking, you're like, have you had the surgery? There is no such thing as the surgery unless you're fucking Caitlyn Jenner and you have millions of dollars and you can apparently get it all done in one swoop.
Yeah.
So there's no one single surgery for which makes a person a man or a woman. Our identities make us who we are, not our genitals. However, for the most common surgeries, there are such. For transgender men, top surgery, which is a male chest reconstruction, hysterectomy, removal of ovaries and uterus, and sometimes paleoplasty, the construction of a penis, or medioplasty, which causes the clitoris to somewhat grow and work like a penis. And for transgender women, there's breast augmentation, implants, an orchiectomy, the removal of the testes, laser hair removal for the face and sometimes body, which is very painful. I always feel bad when I hear women talk about, how many you have to do so many sessions.
Yeah, it's a ton because like one session is just like the base, and you have to keep going back and back and back and back, and just getting lasered.
And that's on your face, and then if you have to do it on your sensitive areas, that's also painful. Tracheal shave, which is reducing the Adam's apple, facial feminization, smaller and more feminine face, and the vaginoplasty, which is the inversion of the penis to create a vagina. So again, every person's going to be different. A lot of trans people don't want surgeries. Most trans people want one or two surgeries. They're like, I need this. Some people need all of them, so it just depends. And then, as we'll talk about in a minute, it really comes down to costs and availability.
Yeah. So the most important thing to note about medical transition is that it is a very long, very painful, and very expensive process. Surgeries are almost never covered out of pocket and must be paid for upfront, as they are considered elective surgeries. In addition, few places of work will allow for the months of time off required to heal from these surgeries, and even fewer jobs will give paid time off. Because of these many obstacles, the majority of transgender people undergo few, if any, of the above surgeries. And as we stated, not every transgender person feels it is necessary to have surgery to feel comfortable in their own skin. But others will struggle with the knowledge that they need a surgery which they will never be able to afford.
Yeah. So like I said, that's a big one. We talked about it, having to pay out of pocket up front for surgery. And then how are you supposed to take care of yourself? How do you have the time off work?
I can't even, there's a couple things that I've thought about getting done, nothing major, not even related to this, but I'm like, I would need 2 weeks off of work to recover. How am I going to do that? So I can only imagine going through such extreme surgeries that are not only costly like that, but then you're like, okay, well, I'm probably not going to have a job after this. So then how am I going to continue to even afford to live?
Right. Yeah.
It's insane the way our medical system works.
And it's insane the way that, the hatred and the way that people act. Like when people give veterans so much shit over the surgeries, like these people go off and they fight and they serve their country and they risk their lives. And they have this insurance. The only thing they have.
They've scarred themselves for life with the things
mentally,
they've seen.
Physically, emotionally, every way.
A lot of them come back at least partially disabled. Give these people the respect that they deserve, the respect you pretend to give them.
Yeah. And then people are like, yeah, they just joined the military so that they could get free surgery. Really? That's why they did it?
Yeah.
like fucking Kristen Beck, who was in the military for 20 years. She fought for 20 years just so she could get surgery and be hated. Okay, sure.
Right. That's exactly why she did it.
That's what... Misconception number 4. Transgender kids get surgery. So one of the biggest lies around the trans community is spun by the alt-right pundits who write articles with titles like Trans Child Experimental Guinea Pig, or Transing Kids is Child Abuse, or Why Are We Encouraging Girls to Mutilate Their Bodies? These are all real headlines that spread the myth that young children are undergoing surgeries and life-altering transitions during their childhoods. It's an absolute flat-out lie. Children under the age of 15 do not undergo trans-related surgery anywhere in the world. And the few surgeries that teens can go through at age 15 are reversible, require multiple doctor referrals, parental consent, therapist approval, that the teen is cognitively aware of the consequences, and generally more than a year of social transition with the teenager living in their correct gender. More advanced surgeries such as genital deconstruction or reconstruction are only available to teens 17 and older and hold the same requirements minus parental consent. So again, 15 years old, that is the oldest you can get any kind of surgery, and those are very limited and require a shit ton of stuff.
The earliest a child can start any form of medical transition is at age 12, when they can receive puberty blockers. Puberty blockers are approved by the FDA and have been used for decades to stem hormones in children who hit puberty at an extremely early age. They're completely safe and completely reversible. From ages 12 to 14, a young teen can use blockers to prevent their body from changes and thus prevent the start of the wrong puberty. Again, this is after doctor and therapists have agreed the child is suffering from dysphoria and after the parents have been consented. In the Netherlands, a large study of transgender youth found that only 1.9% of participants chose to stop transition after starting puberty blockers. At age 16, in most Western countries at least, a child can begin the proper hormones for their correct gender. Again, these hormones are reversible, though some of the effects may not go away entirely if they are used for a prolonged period of time. For instance, several years of testosterone may cause an individual to always have facial hair, but this is only after a lot of exposure to the hormone and varies from person to person. And one big argument or one big answer I saw before for anybody who questions, like, how can a kid know if they're transgender? Mm-hmm. And the parent responded, like, well, you always knew you were a guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, you were never a kid, like, oh, maybe I'm, maybe I'm not who I think I am,
Yeah.
You always know who you, I don't know how to say this. You know what I'm trying to say, though.
Yeah,
Maybe
you
can
always know who
it.
you are. It's like,
yeah.
But it's hard when you've never had to question something because you don't realize that you've never questioned it. But that's
Right.
the whole point.
Exactly.
If you never once questioned that you were trans, then that's like, then that obviously someone who is questioning that probably has some real questions.
Right.
Like I remember, I've told this before, like when I yelled at my therapist and I was like, everybody questions their gender, Jim. And he was like, no, they don't. And that was the moment that it like really hit me that I was like, oh shit, like not normal people, don't want to say that, but like cisgender people never question their gender.
Right.
But
yeah.
it was the only thing I've ever known my whole life, Same thing with like, being attracted to girls. I always knew I was attracted to girls and I just assumed everybody just knew that they were attracted, everybody's attracted to everybody. Of course they would be, It like never crossed my mind that everybody wasn't having the same thoughts.
Yeah.
I do like though, one of the big things, like they put kids on hormones, then they put them on puberty blockers, and this is something they pulled from decades of doing this to other kids. So like you've got an 8 or 9 year old going through puberty, nobody wants that, so they did puberty blockers, and nobody looks at those kids and says, "Oh wow, shouldn't be putting them on hormones."
Right.
But if you do it to a trans kid who's questioning, who might end up having to reverse all that shit in 5 years, then you're being abusive to children. It's shit.
It's really bizarre.
Exactly. And hormones as a whole, like even me, if I stopped hormones right now, there may be like my voice wouldn't get any higher. It would stay low. Mm-hmm. But there would like I would just my body fat would redistribute, and like everything that's happened would just go back to where it was over time. It wouldn't be immediate, but it would go back over time. So anyway, so that's all shit. So no trans kids are not getting caught up and sliced. We're not putting penises on 5-year-old and shit like that. Misconception number 5: trans people are unstable and unable to fully adapt to society.
This only applies to you.
It only applies to people that have breakdowns in their dentist when they say that you're going to get a shot in your mouth. Maybe I am unstable, but it's nothing to do with being trans. It's only because I'm a big bitch. This is perhaps the most foolish and harmful notion out there about transgender individuals. If you followed our podcast over the last year, then you know this is not true. We have covered trans heroes who made advances in medical industry, such as Alan Hart, business entrepreneurs like Lucy Hicks Anderson and Reed Erickson. We've covered activists like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, author and local character Joseph Lobdell, even veterans like Albert Cashier and Kristen Beck. Wherever you look in history, there the trans community exists. Yes, often in the shadows or hidden in the back of history books, usually overlooked and many times maligned, but trans people have been there contributing to society the same way as every other human. The biggest difference, though, is we're still being murdered for who we are. As we end this episode, we will read a list of those who we have lost to violence this past year. This list contains only America, as we could not include the hundreds of names from around the world. However, we do encourage you to check out the TDOR.info.com for a complete list, and of course that link will be in our website.
So this is from November of 2018 to November of 2019. I'm going to do my very, very best to pronounce these names properly. Anybody who's ever listened to this podcast knows that I cannot speak English very well. So I apologize.
Most of these are pretty easy,
I'm going to let you take the first one.
Okay.
That's why I put the warning in there.
Okay. He's like preparing everyone. Okay. T.D. Dansbury, a black trans woman shot and killed in Baltimore, Maryland on November 28th, 2018.
Kiana Mattel, a black trans woman shot and killed in Detroit, Michigan on December 7th, 2018.
Dana Martin, a black trans woman shot and killed in Montgomery, Alabama on January 6th.
Ellie Marie Washtalk, non-binary/trans feminine person found murdered at home in St. Augustine, Florida on January 31st.
Jazeline Ware, a black trans woman found murdered at home in Memphis, Tennessee on March 25th.
Ashanti Carmen, a black trans woman shot and killed in Prince George's County, Maryland on March 30th.
Claire Legato, a black trans woman shot in the head in Cleveland, Ohio on April 15th.
Malaysia Booker, a black trans woman beaten and shot to death in Dallas, Texas on May 18th.
Michelle Tamika Washington, a black trans woman shot and killed in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on May 19th.
Paris Cameron, a black trans woman shot and killed in Detroit, Michigan on May 25th.
Chanel Lindsay, a black trans woman found murdered in Dallas, Texas on June 1st.
Johanna Medina Leon, transgender El Salvadorian immigrant who was denied medical treatment by ICE. Transgender El Salvadorian immigrant who was denied medical treatment by ICE officials and died in custody on June 1st.
Chanel Skurlock, a black trans woman shot in Lumberton, North Carolina on June 5th.
Zoe Spears, a black trans woman shot and killed in Fairmount Heights, Maryland on June 13th.
Brooklyn Lindsay, a black trans woman found beaten and shot in Kansas City, Missouri on June 25th.
Denali Berries Stuckey, a black trans woman shot and killed in North Charleston, South Carolina on July 20th.
Tracy Single, a black trans woman found murdered in a parking lot in Houston, Texas on July 30th.
Kiki Fantroy, a black trans woman shot and killed in Miami-Dade County, Florida on July 31st.
Pebbles Ladime Doe, a black trans woman shot and killed in Allendale County, South Carolina on August 4th.
Bailey Reeves, a black trans woman shot and killed in Baltimore, Maryland on September 2nd.
B. Love Slater, a black trans woman bound and beaten, shot and burned in her car in Clewiston, Florida on September 4th.
Alicia Chanel Stanley, a black trans